Hello, welcome into the WK page. I am George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here for Weather Now Kentucky. And of course, we do have a lot to discuss tonight for tomorrow's severe setup. As always, as you're coming into the video, if you wouldn't mind, hit the share button at the bottom portion of your screen. Get this on your news feed so that way your friends and family can view it as well. We want to make sure we're getting everyone informed for a pretty impactful day for tomorrow. So please take care of that for us. Help us by sharing the video. Again, at the bottom portion of your screen, you'll see that share button. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and say some hellos to everyone that's coming through here. Kim on YouTube, hello. She says, thanks for all you do. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate y'all's trust. And, of course, just want to take a quick second and make a real quick note. We'll be live with you guys throughout the entire event tomorrow when things start to really go, sideways a little bit. So just keep that in mind. You'll never be alone. Tomorrow is going to freak a lot of people out just because of the amount of people that are talking about it. And quite frankly, just because of how serious the event is. But just know that we'll always be here. Samantha, thank you for your 99 stars. I appreciate that so much. I'll wait to probably, you guys know how it goes on Facebook. I'll wait till we get to the 50 share marker to get going. So make sure you get those shares up for me. And again, mainly that's just to help everyone get informed. You guys actually have no idea how much of an impact you have on being able to inform as many people as possible. You'd be surprised by the amount of messages that we get that tell us that they only got informed because one of their friends shared it. So thank you all for your all's continuous help with everything. Catherine, Kevin, Sarah, Haley, Shonda, thank you all for all your helps with sharing the video. I appreciate that. So we'll get going here probably about 45 seconds. On YouTube, thank you for everything. Feeling nervous. Deb, thank you for tuning in. JC says back again. Thank you watching here in Mayfield, Kentucky. Chastity, hello. Kilmer, we're going to dive into all that for you guys. Be safe and everyone, and thanks, George, for what you do. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate that. Anetta, hello. Kyle, Sabrina, Tracy, Michael, Emily, everyone else, thank you guys for all the shares. Got a few more and then we'll get going. Gina, hello, how are you doing? Again, we are live on both YouTube and Facebook tonight, so if you find yourself wanting to throw it up on your TV, YouTube would be the better option for that. If you want to just hold it in your phone, then Facebook probably be the better option for that. Thank you, George, for all you do. I appreciate that, Kayla. Shared, hopefully everyone will be safe. Becky, thank you so much. Rebecca, hello from Radcliffe. Amanda, Billy Joe, thank you guys. Hello, hello. And again, so Caitlin sends 200 stars, says everyone follow, like, and share, please. Thank you so much there, Caitlin. I appreciate you. So, of course, as always, we'll dive into our forecast. We'll also look at the SPC's forecast, and then we'll also look at the actual model data itself. So a lot of different things to look at here. Some things have changed since the last time that we talked this morning. Of course, if you've read our post throughout the day, you probably are caught up on a lot of things. But some things are a little bit different here, and we'll go into all that information in about 15 seconds. Don't pay attention to the hair, as always. It's been a day. Of course, when you're talking about days like this, don't pay attention to what little hair I have left. I know it's going everywhere. Let's go ahead and dive into the information here. Thank you again to everyone tuning in. Of course, as always, please tap the share button at the bottom portion of your screen. If you are just now tuning in, I am George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now Kentucky. We do have a moderate level of severe weather to worry about tomorrow for some portions of Kentucky. Enhanced level risk from the Storm Prediction Center for a good chunk of Kentucky. Slight just outside of that, and then marginal just outside of that. Now, before you guys ask me, because I know how this stuff goes, you're going to ask me, can any of these zones shift at all? Based off of the modeling data that we've seen this afternoon and evening going into right now, I do think that this moderate risk could be probably pulled west and south just a little bit. The reason for that is the models themselves have slowed down the duration or the actual movement of the storm, which allows for a little bit more energy to be pulled a bit more further west than what the current SPC outlook is. Our forecast at this moment looks like this. So 4.5 out of 5. I almost never put a 5 out of 5. So this is probably about as high as I'll ever go. 4.5 out of 5. For Northern Kentucky, again, this might move a little bit based off of the afternoon and evening model data that we've seen. The biggest question mark is going to be overnight storms, and I'll explain those to you in just a second. 4 out of 5 risk for this orange zone from Lexington to Moorhead, Somerset, Campbellsville, Elizabethtown, and Louisville, including Litchfield as well. 3 out of 5 just outside of that. 2 out of 5 just outside of that. 1 out of 5, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of people ask what this means. Basically, this means the most vulnerable areas. So, for example, we expect the most amount of severe weather to occur in this red zone, just outside of that orange zone, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of how that forecast rock and rolls there. The Storm Prediction Center's tornado outlook does have a hatch zone for a wide chunk of Kentucky. I'm going to break down this map because a lot of people get confused by this, and rightfully so. It's a bit confusing. By the way, thank you to everyone tuning in. I see all your stars and all those shares and likes. Thank you guys so much for that. I'll make sure I thank you all individually here in a second. Let's get through the information real quickly. So a hatched area. So the difference is between a colored area and a hatched area. The colored area is just a chance at any tornado, usually a weaker tornado. The hatched area identifies a location that the Storm Prediction Center from the National Weather Service, it identifies a location that they think would be at risk of producing a strong or significant tornado. Significant tornadoes, anything classified between EF2 to EF5, like you see in the bottom portion of your screen here. So a 2% risk out here for the green parts, 5 to 9% risk just outside of that, 10 to 14% for the yellow area. The red area is a whopping 15 to 29% risk, and the hatched area is a greater than 10% probability of a significant tornado, EF2 to EF5 level. Now, it does not mean everywhere in this entire zone is going to see a violent tornado. It just means that this is the best general area for that tornado to actually, for tornadoes to actually occur. So that's a quick breakdown of that. And again, I'm going to show you actual model data as well, not just the forecast. Though severe wind outlook is pretty large. So pretty much generally the same areas. Hatched area is a 10% probability of significant wind gust. A significant wind gust is anything greater than 74 miles per hour. The red area is a 30 to 44% chance of severe winds that are, I believe, greater than 54 miles per hour within a 25-mile point. Yellow is 15 to 29% risk, and then brown is 5 to 14% risk. So you're kind of getting the idea here. Central and eastern Kentucky is a lot more vulnerable than far western Kentucky for this setup, which is a bit abnormal because usually it's western Kentucky under the gun. The hail outlook from the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center has the greatest risk of, once again, central and eastern Kentucky, a 30 to 44% chance of a severe hail, which I believe is greater than 1 inch in diameter. It might be 1.25 inches. I'll have to look that up. It varies on different forecast zones. So the hatched area is a 10% probability of significant hail, which is greater than 2 inches in diameter. And that's mainly for Ohio and Indiana and northern Kentucky. So that's kind of the breakdown there. So you kind of realize for yourself there, all hazards are truly on the table for a great chunk of Kentucky. So again, there's their forecast. And here's our forecast. So you can see they kind of line up pretty well. The only real difference is that our red zone is a little bit bigger than theirs. Other than that, it's pretty great agreement all across the board here. Now, again, I expect them to make some changes. I expect ourselves to make some changes after we get done with this video. But that's the latest information that we have available to us. Now what I want to show you is the actual model data, and then I'll get into a lot of your questions because I know you guys have a lot of them. Again, thank you guys for all the shares, the likes, and the stars. And on YouTube, thank you for all the new subscribers and likes over there as well. I appreciate you guys hitting the thumbs up button. So what I want to show you here is the HRRR model. I believe that this model is handling the system best. Now, we have gotten some better agreement tonight, but this model and the other main model we look at, the NAM3K model for short range, they still disagree on the overnight hours. The overnight hours, I cannot explain to you how important they are. So here's kind of the scenarios that we're looking at here. So before I go into the model data, I want to just kind of break down the different scenarios that we have here for you guys. So what we're looking at here is an obviously a significant weather event. I don't think we've had a moderate in Kentucky in April since at least 2012. I'll have to go check that. So it's been at least 12 years since we have had a moderate in Kentucky in April. So it kind of just tells you the significance of the event that we're looking at here. And that's not to scare anyone. That's just a fact. What we're looking at here is a couple of different scenarios that might set up. So one scenario that one model is showing is a first round of storms to clip isolated portions of Kentucky between around 5 to 11 a.m. Eastern time. Okay, and then a second round to come in between, let's say, 4 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. All right, both rounds carrying their own risk. The first round would carry a large hail damaging wind risk with a low end tornado risk. The second round would carry a large tornado risk as well as large damaging wind risk and a moderate hail risk. So they both have their own parameters to worry about. The second model shows no first round in the morning, and it shows an even stronger second round as a result of that. So what we're kind of rooting for here, because we're dealing with so much energy that we have at play, What we're really rooting for here is actually we want multiple rounds to come through if you want a safer solution. That would be because that first round would actually help to tank down some of the fuel. It won't tank down all of it. We're not dealing with the type of setup that if we, usually in Kentucky, if we do get a first round in the morning, usually it takes away all the fuel for the storm system for the second round. This system has so much moisture with it, and not just so much moisture at the ground, but so much moisture throughout every layer of the atmosphere. And what that tells us is it's absolutely packed with energy. So even if we do get a first round in the morning and we only get a few hours of clear time, I still think a second round would still be significant. Now, if we don't get any type of if we just get a few cells in the morning, let's say it's just a few isolated cells, they come through, they can do their thing, they put down severe hail and whatnot, severe winds like we talked about, right? And then they kind of get out of the way. Well, then we got a big problem. Because that means that all that energy that we just talked about, instead of it being split in between two rounds, now it's pretty much majorly going to one round in the afternoon, and that creates a big issue. So for the HRRR model, I believe on this run it doesn't show it, but it's trending more toward having a first round in the morning. Let's go ahead and put this up here for you. So let's go ahead and put this into the zoom to the local view here. Just kind of take a trip through the night on this model, and then I'm going to show you the other model. Now, I do think the HRRR model is handling this best. The NAM model, if you guys know what I'm talking about here, that model tends to have a bias toward an abundant of surface energy, and usually it's overdone. I will tell you that it's not alone in its thinking. It's just so outrageous with the numbers that it's really hard to believe. Almost like if you're a storm lover, almost like it's too good to be true. So as we head throughout the night here, you can see this model is not really indicating any type of issues for tonight. And then we get to the overnight hours, and it has a few rain showers, isolated cells. And then you see the big boy problems coming through later that night. I'll go through that a lot slower here in just a second. I just want to give you an overall look here. So again, this model for at this time has nothing going on in Kentucky. Maybe a couple of rain showers. Well, let's check the actual live radar here. We see it's pretty accurate so far. So we know that this is on to something here. Now, let's take a look at what's happening across the entire United States here. You can see it's a full-blown severe outbreak for Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. And that's mainly for large hail. Actually, I believe there are some reports of DVD-sized hail throughout Oklahoma. I'd have to double-check that. But that's extremely, extremely large hail. So let's take a look at what's going on there. Right, we have the storms that are kind of lining through Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas area. And if we zoom out to the national view here of this model, at the same time, it does see that, right? North Texas, a few in Oklahoma, right? And then some in Missouri and Indiana. Now, so we know that this model is on to something here. We know that so far, this model is performing pretty well. I wouldn't say it's doing perfect, but I would say it's doing pretty well. So let's go back into the local view here and zoom in, and we'll go throughout the night. So far on this model, it's showing that nothing is really coming tonight. That's why we took away the alert day for Monday. We had a couple of isolated hail cells earlier in very far northern Kentucky earlier this afternoon. Those really dissipated pretty quickly. As we head throughout Tuesday morning, this is valid for 6 a.m. Eastern time. You can see not a whole lot going on. Maybe a couple of cells trying to dive their way into Kentucky at this point, but it kind of rides along the river. Now, we'll tell you when I come to a newer run. So this is actually this afternoon's run, and the only reason I'm using it is because it can see out further. But if I come to a newer run here, right, and we kind of go through here, it's going to show you some more activity than what that model showed throughout the morning. So this is that same time frame, 7 a.m. Central Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can see it's shifted a little bit south, right? So we have a really strong, this is probably a supercell toward Florence and Covington, and there's a couple of strong cells down toward the Paducah area, but still not a whole lot. Okay, so I think this 18Z run that we're looking at is doing pretty good so far. So let's keep going through here, and that's one of the biggest things when we're talking about a system like this that can be so impactful. What you want to do is if you're looking at this right at home and you're looking at models, what you want to do is look at that model, look at what it's doing on the actual radar, look at what it's doing in future model runs, right, and make sure it's performing correctly. So as we push throughout 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., noon. Not a whole lot going on. There are a few isolated supercells that may pop up, right? But not a whole lot going on. There's not really a true round one, and that's the issue. As we head throughout the afternoon, you can see a supercell blossoms really quickly near Bowling Green, and then it produces a strong storm system going toward eastern Kentucky before it dissipates down. And then you see the actual front here. Now, this doesn't look impressive, right? It's just a thin line. George, why are we worrying about this? This thin line is probably more powerful than anything we've seen all year. And the reason for that is if you look throughout this line, we see kidney bean, kidney bean, kidney bean. This will be a budding kidney bean down here. What do I mean by kidney beans? They're kind of a shape of the cell, right? Usually when we see cells that make that kidney bean look, they're typically supercells that are embedded within that line. And I know I'm going to save you guys from all the science jumbo tonight because I've given you that all throughout the last 24 hours. If you want to hear some more of the science, we have written posts and videos back on our YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook that you can look at. But just know that with this line, there are winds that are going multiple directions. And whenever that happens, those storms tend to rotate really well throughout each layer of the atmosphere. So this line, while it doesn't look impressive to the naked eye, it's actually a really impressively strong line that's going to push through. And this is actually valid. I'll go back to where it starts around 4 p.m. Around 5 p.m. And then it kind of gets going right around 7 p.m. toward the I-65 corridor, and then keeps pushing out there to the east before it dies down toward eastern Kentucky. So you can see from this model run why we left western Kentucky out of the threat zone and why we left eastern Kentucky out of the greatest threat zones. Because we do expect that this to be a bullseye thing, kind of almost a bullseye of Kentucky. I'm not going to save you from all the boring stuff once again. Just know that tomorrow is a considerably large threat, especially for large tornadoes that may push through the area. Our greatest threat area is, once again, northern Kentucky, and then a big orange zone just outside of that, and then a lighter orange zone just outside of that, and then so on and so forth. The timing right now, let me go ahead and pull up that image for you. I thought I had it up, but I guess I didn't. Let me go ahead and pull that up real quickly. The timing, once again, there we go, is not Monday. I need to change this. This is not Monday, by the way. This is Tuesday. It was just an oversight that I made. Not enough coffee today. Tuesday, 12 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. Right now, that looks to be the main time frame. I know it's a really big time frame, but once again, that kind of accounts for any isolated supercells that may jump in front of the line, that may just pop up and go rogue out of nowhere. Because when you're dealing with this much energy that we have at play, right, storms can initiate at any time. So that's why we have such a wide range there. Now, I didn't put a round one in here. The reason for that, I do think a round one could happen, and I might change the forecast to display that. But at this time, both the North American model and the HRRR model, and even the rapid refresh model, the main three models we look at when we get this close to a storm system, don't show a round one. However, I will tell you that there isn't plenty of energy for a round one to start. So I wouldn't be surprised if a round one does start, let's say around 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern time. So we might have to make a separate map for that. You can see we do have the tornado chart at a 4 out of 5, a wind out of 4 out of 5, and a hail at a 3 out of 5. At the bottom here, you'll read that all hazards are on the table, including tornadoes, some violent, damaging winds, and hail. Now, the tornado threat, again, to me, is greatest in that orange and red zone. Or the darker orange and the darker red zone. That lighter orange, or the 3 out of 5, for me is more of a damaging wind threat. And then that lighter zone out of the side of that, the 2 out of 5, is where you probably find more of your hail. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. That's kind of the breakdown of our map. And I showed you already the Storm Prediction Center's map, so I'm not going to go through that just once again. But now I'll get to some of your questions here. And let me go ahead and thank some of the people that have sent us some donations. Lisa, Teresa, thank you both for your 50 stars. John with the 1,000 stars, my friend. That makes it multiple nights in a row you've sent a lot of stars. Thank you, my friend John. I appreciate that. Katie with the 99 stars says, do you think this will affect outbound flights from SDF in the morning? For the morning, it all depends on if that round one starts. But if it does, it absolutely will affect that. Amy with the 100 stars, I appreciate that. Amy with another 20. Lily with 500 stars, thank you so much. I appreciate your all stars donations. Thank you guys again for all of that. I appreciate you. Dylan on YouTube says, so no bad weather from Muhlenberg County in western Kentucky. At this time, I expect things to start east of Muhlenberg County. So I'm not including Muhlenberg County in any of my real forecasts at the moment. But again, I want to make it very, very, very clear that this system can change throughout the next few hours. And I know that's frustrating to hear because you want a for sure forecast, but nothing is ever for sure in the weather industry, is it? With the type of complexity that we're dealing with here, guys, I could easily see this changing a couple times before the system even starts. I cannot stress, I need everyone to hear this because you're going to ask, well, what can change? I cannot stress enough how important the hours between 2 a.m. and 9 a.m. are. Okay, the reason for that is because if we get multiple rain showers and they just stay around, well, they're going to start draining a little bit more of the energy. And there's also less time for our environment to recover. I think regardless of what we see on Tuesday morning, we're going to see a second round. But how long and what exactly we see on Tuesday morning will greatly affect what happens Tuesday afternoon. If we don't see a round one, Tuesday afternoon might be a historical day. And I'm not saying that lightly. If we see a round one, it will help to mitigate some things. So what you're rooting for right now is a lot of loud thunderstorm activity to come through Tuesday morning, which will carry its own severe risk because, again, there's still plenty of energy. But when you talk about 2 rounds and you have that energy being split between 2 rounds versus energy going to 1 round, you would want that energy to be split, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Darvis, I appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate you. One of my old-time friends right there. I haven't talked to him in forever. Is Hardin County a bullseye? I don't think anyone's a true bullseye in this event. I think anywhere in the 4 out of 5 or greater zone is at play for some really strong weather, truly. Tyler, so I wouldn't say it's just damaging winds. I would say that's the most likely mode. I still cannot rule out tornadic activity for anywhere in Kentucky, really, but for Bowling Green more specifically. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that, Tyler. What do I think about the tornado probability along the I-65 corridor? So probably the I-65 corridor is in a weird spot, right? So the northern portions of the I-65 corridor, I think the tornado odds are probably, unfortunately, a little bit, enhanced. The southern portion of the I-65 corridor, let's say closer to the Tennessee border, tornado odds aren't as high. I-65 is also in that weird spot too, because if you get that round one rain, because I-65 is a little bit more west than, let's say, Florence, you have less time to destabilize before that second round, right? So that's why that first round, guys, is so utterly important. So we'll be up. We'll be watching that 2 to 9 a.m. time frame for you all. And, of course, we'll be live if anything goes sideways in the early morning hours or at any time, really. But, again, we're looking at the time frame as well for some potential for some strong thunderstorm activity there. Maybe a silly question, but if the morning storms stay north of an area, does it still mean... So, that's a great question. So, that round one, it just depends on how large it is, right? Let's say it's a couple of isolated cells, right? Let's say we get 3 or 4 cells throughout those couple of hours. It doesn't really matter where those cells are. It's not going to affect the energy pool for the rest of Kentucky. Now, if we get widespread thunder showers, right, to come through the early morning hours, then it affects the energy pool for a great chunk of Kentucky. So it just depends. Every little detail really matters on Tuesday morning. From Chicago to Florence, if you would have to choose a time to travel, what would you do? Probably tomorrow night after 9 p.m. That would probably be the best time. Ashley, I would assume so. I mean, again, guys, so if you do plan on going to bed tonight and you're scared of storms happening, we're not scared, but you want to be prepared. Just make sure you have your phones charged up, ringers all the way up. If you do have a weather radio, make sure that's set to alarms. If there's any type of tornado emergency, I believe the emergency system in your phone will go pretty loudly. Now, so we'll be here for you guys as well if you want to turn off post notifications for our page or follow us on Twitter. We post several more updates on Twitter than we do on Facebook here. So I just want to point out to you real quickly that we are on Twitter as well, at WeatherNowKY. The reason we post more on Twitter than we do on Facebook is because on Facebook, if we post too much, Facebook punishes us and they stop pushing our post out. So we post more on Twitter than we do on Facebook. So at WeatherNowKY over there, or X, whatever you want to call it, up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to call it. It's always going to be Twitter for me. But maybe I'm just getting old. What's the biggest threat for Fort Knox area? I think the biggest threat for pretty much everywhere is tornadic activity. So it doesn't really matter where you're at. I think the biggest threat is damaging winds and tornadic activity. And then large hail is also a threat as well. I really, truly think, guys, all hazards are on the table. I know sometimes we say that and it tends to lean more than one way than the other. But I really think with a system like this, all hazards are truly on the table for a great chunk of Kentucky. Anyone that's in a 3 out of 5 or higher, you're in a great chunk, you're in a great area to see, hazardous weather at some time tomorrow. Now, keep in mind, not every single county in that color is going to see that weather, right? This is just a general outlook. Same as that just depends on where you're at. I think if you're into 4 out of 5 or higher, you probably need to go to a safer spot. What's the radar you showed the other day of the rotation thing? Sierra, I don't think I'm really sure what you're talking about. If you're asking what radars we use radar Omega, radar scope, and WSV3. If you're talking about those brown rotation circles that we talked about last night, that was on the HRRR model. Approximately how much of a warning time wise does the alert system on our phones provide? Oh, Lakin, I don't know. I don't make the emergency broadcast system. I'm not even going to lie to you. I know that as soon as they push out the alert, I know as soon as they push out the warning, I think it's only like a 10-second delay, and then it goes out to phones. I think. Don't quote me on that though. That's not. I don't know if that's a fact or not. Gabby says, if there is a round 1, do we need to worry about tornadoes while sleeping tonight? There is a tornado threat. If there is a round 1, there will be a tornado threat with it. Now, albeit that tornado threat will be lower than the afternoon. However, it's still there. What are the best and worst times to travel? I would avoid travel in the morning if there's a round 1. I would avoid travel, during that rush hour time, around 4 to 8 p.m. In the afternoon as well. I've heard a lot of people talking and discussing about the December tornado threat or December tornadoes that happened in Bowling Green in comparison to tomorrow. What's your opinion on that? That was a completely different system. So I know what you're talking about. That was what we call a cold pull system, which is completely different than what we're dealing with tomorrow. I think the tornado threat overall tomorrow is probably greater than it was on that day. That day we only had 2 or 3 supercells that really occurred, and they kind of overachieved. On this system, the energy is way more spread out. Again, round 1, if it does occur, would be anywhere between 4 to 8 a.m. Eastern time. I'm sorry, that was O data. 5 to 9 a.m. Eastern time. Round 2 would be in the afternoon. I'm not, Sierra. I'm just not sure what you're talking about. Grayson, Kentucky, I believe, is in our orange zone right here. Okay, I think we're getting to a lot of the repetitive stuff, which means I probably already, if you're asking a question right now, I probably already answered at some point. It's not to be rude, guys. It's just with 120 counties to cover, we gotta avoid. Aaliyah, thank you for your 24 hours. I appreciate that. Are there any areas you're more concerned about than others? At this time, I'm very concerned about this northern Kentucky area. Now, that can shift, right? So it's what we talked about. And new model data is coming in as we speak, I believe. So I'll take a look at that and then get a post out. How do you know what round me and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 we are in the area of? What did we? Huh? I'm not sure what you mean by that question, Joyce. I'm not sure if I'm tired or if I just for what that was. Yes, Aaron, and then they ran a couple of checks and they did find a couple of issues. I believe they've gotten it fixed since then. Keep in mind that tornado sirens are not made to alert people that are inside their homes. Tornado sirens are only made to alert people that are outside in their cars traveling or outside at the time. So that's why we always tell folks, don't rely on tornado sirens. All right. Best advice for when you're on the road traveling. I'm assuming that you mean like while you're traveling through a strong storm. So a lot of people have this misconception. That's a great question, by the way. A lot of people have this misconception that if they do see a tornado while they're driving, or when they do see strong winds while they're driving, to get under an overpass. That is absolutely the worst thing that you can do, because the underpass can trap winds underneath it, right? And on top of that, I'm going to let you guys know that if a strong tornado does come through, it's going to have absolutely no problem ripping under that thing. So you don't want to be under an overpass, because all that concrete might come down on you, right? So that's probably the worst thing that you can do. A lot of people have that misconception. I just want to put that out there real quickly. Kayla, I'll re-show it here in just a second. But a lot of people have that misconception. The best thing that you could do is actually to find a ditch and get as low as possible, right? A lot of times you can also just stay in your vehicle. A lot of times, a lot of folks freak out and they just try to go looking for other things. When really the best thing that you can do is actually get in your vehicle and get down on the ground if you're small enough to do. Now, if you're big like me, probably a little bit hard to do. But to get in your vehicle, right, and just park where you can, and just try to stay out of the way, right? If you see that tornado, right, and a lot of times, a lot of people freak out and they start looking all around, right? But if you try to, number one thing, stay calm. But if you actually look at the tornado and if you have time to tell how it's moving, right? If you can tell maybe it's going away from you or maybe if it's coming toward you, right? You want to try to get out of its path. I know it sounds a lot more simpler. You're like, why are you saying that? Well, a lot of times when people see a tornado for the first time, their first thought is just run. And sometimes they run right into it when they could have just stayed where they were. So try to identify the path if you have time, right? See if it's going in front of you. If it is, just pull over, stay out of the way. And the best thing you can do is just get low. Get low. And good point, Angel. Don't put yourself next to semi-trucks. Those things can easily tip over. They're so top-heavy. People like to do that because they think, oh, that's going to block the winds for me. We're good. We're good. No, those things like to tip over very quickly. They're very top-heavy. The best thing you can do is get as low as possible. Get a ditch. Try to get something to cover your head. Get as low as you can in your car if you can. Stay out of the way of the glass. If you have like a blanket or something in your car. So for me, I always keep it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but like a cheap blanket in the car. It's always in the trunk. We always have flashlights and whatnot as well. Just anything that can cover my head real quickly, right? Because you don't want that glass getting to you. So just think about it as that. You want to stay as low as possible. You don't want to get high to where anything can be lifted at you. Think about it like that. You don't want to get high for anything to be lifted at you. You don't want to get under anything for it to fall on you, and you don't want to get beside anything for it to tip over on you. So stay low and out of the way as possible. Is a crawl space safe? Yes, I believe, Katie, because you want to go to the lowest, most interior spot in your building. So, for example, for me, I have a basement, so I would go downstairs, right, and I would go away from metal pipes. A lot of people forget that. Stay away from metal pipes and grab something to cover your head, like a couch cushion or I don't know, a few thick pillows, anything to cover your head, right? If you don't have a basement, you want to go to the bathtub. Right, same thing, cover your head, right? If you don't have either of those things, just try to go to the middle of your house, away from the windows, and try to get as low as possible. And just stay away from metal structures. Is there still no cap? Yeah, there's still no cap. All right, so a lot of people are asking for model data once again, so I'm going to go through that real quickly, and then we're going to wrap up this video because we've gotten to the 30-minute marker, and we're going over that point. And I got some new model data to get out, so when I get done with this video, expect us to make a post on Twitter and on Facebook immediately, or not immediately, I should say, about an hour after we get done. So let's run through here again. So this current model shows really a very limited activity for Tuesday morning. I can tell you, though, that on the newer versions of this model, it's trying to pull in a few thunder showers for Tuesday morning between 5 to about 11 a.m. Eastern time, really mainly along the Ohio River. We'll see on that. I'm not 100% sold on that. I'm also not 100% sold against it either. That would just be something we have to watch by ear, guys, play by ear, guys. I mean, truly. So, on this model run, let's go through here. 7 a.m., 8 a.m., nothing a whole lot going on. Might be a couple of rogue supercells to jump out in front of the actual main action here around noon or lunchtime. Those will travel up to the northeast there. And then we start getting going around 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. Bowling Green, now again, this is not going to be 100% verbatim. This supercell could be to the right a little bit, could be to the left a little bit, but just know a supercell may develop down in southern Kentucky around 3 p.m. Eastern time, and another one near the I-65 corridor toward Elizabethtown as well. And then that'll move out of the way here toward eastern Kentucky and start the weekend as it heads past Lexington. And then the actual main front comes through. And once again, this is not looking like anything impressive on the naked eye, but when I go to click on a sounding here, don't nobody freak out, by the way. When I go to click on a sounding here, you can see it lights up for the hazard type. If we look at this hodograph up here, I'm going to teach you a little something. When it goes to the right that strong, that means that storm is turning. And when we look at these wind barbs over here, so this is different layers of the atmosphere. Down here where it says SFC is the surface, right? So that's the surface, that's the ground, that's where we're at. And when we go up, we're going up into the atmosphere, thousands and thousands of feet. What we notice when that line comes through is we have winds going one direction, basically southwest and northeast, southwest, northeast, southwest, northeast. Now we have pretty much west to east, southwest, northeast, southwest, northeast, south to north, right? So what we're noticing are winds that are going this direction, right? And then at the ground, they go, right? So we have to keep an eye on that. That means that storm is definitely turning, right? So that's why that line right there doesn't look super impressive to the naked eye, but there are supercells embedded everywhere in that line, everywhere. So that's kind of where we're at for now. That main line looks to be initiating around 6 p.m. or so, and then it'll move throughout Kentucky. But you can see on this run, while we left Western Kentucky pretty much out of everything, because there's just not a whole lot happening over there for Paducah, Muhlenberg County, this bottom left corner here, Murray. Not a whole lot happening on this run. Now, again, this could easily shift a little bit. 50 miles makes all the difference, right? So we'll keep you guys posted with several posts throughout the night and the morning, and we'll probably do a live broadcast around lunchtime tomorrow as well before everything gets going, and then we'll go from there. Billy, thank you for the 50 stars. Lisa with the 20 stars, thank you so much. Jody with 50 as well. Akaris with 200 stars. She says, is an interior hallway safe enough for this in Frankfurt? If that's all you have available and that's best you can do, absolutely. You just got to do what you got to do at that point. Just make sure you have something to cover your head. Leah with 20 stars, thank you so much for that. I appreciate you. All right, at this point, I think it's a pretty good time to stop this video. We've answered a lot of the questions so far. If you're asking a question and I'm not answering them right now, it's probably because I've already answered it several times. Also, if you have any questions about forecast or timing, all that information is already on our Twitter and Facebook. You can actually just scroll through that and look if you like. We're also going to make a new post coming up here in about an hour on new data coming through, and we'll identify any changes if necessary then as well. Until then, guys, just stay safe, stay calm. We'll get through this together. I'm George Herbig, Chief Forecaster here with Weather Now Kentucky. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe, Kentucky.